I'm Jonathan Sessions. I was born and raised in Columbia, Missouri, technically Boone County, because it's still an unincorporated portion of the city limits. I've been on the, I spent my educational career in the Columbia Public Schools. I went to Russell and West, Smithton for a very little bit because it was being opened that year that should have been a 7th grader. Went to West and then Hickman High School. So it was kind of strange. I went to Russell, West, Smithton, back to West, then to Hickman. So went to university off and on. Graduated with a degree in education. But while I was at the university, I started a company, and while I was at the university, that company took off and continued to grow, and it quickly, I realized that at some point that it was not, education wasn't going to be what I went into, that at least immediately. Mm-hmm. And so I took that opportunity to expand my company as I was graduating from MU, and I've been growing it ever since. So have been on the board since I was 6 or 7, so it's been about 10 years now. Or I'm wrapping up year 10, so I've been, it's 3 full terms, and there was that one completion term of a year right at the very beginning. I came on for 1 year to wrap up.
You were appointed?
I was not appointed.
Oh, okay.
No, Jim was appointed, and he was appointed for 6 months.
Okay.
And then during the next election cycle, there's a election for the regular seats, as there always is, and there's a provision that has a completion term. Oh. So Jim had been appointed by the board to fulfill until the next municipal election. Carla Despain at the time, Carla Williams, had decided not to run for re-election. Jim ran for her 3-year seat, and that left that 1 year completion term open. It was Rosie Tippin's seat. And so I ran for 1 year, got elected. Less than a year later, was running for school board again. And in that time, since then, I've been re-elected 4 times, or I've been elected 4 times, I guess. Re-elected 3 additional full terms.
The isolation rooms at Core and probably elsewhere, they are potentially doing harm to children, and it's a tremendous public relations nightmare for the district. What do you think should be done?
Well, I think one important thing is that to understand is that, or I guess one of the public relations part, the challenges, and one of the biggest challenges to just make clear is that we're using a lot of terms interchangeably. Seclusion is prohibited in the Columbia Public Schools. Isolation is prohibited in the Columbia Public Schools, except for if you read our policy, Roger, you've got one of those looks on there like you're
well, seclusion is
prohibited per our policy.
It's holding a child, confining a child, waiting for police to arrive.
Yeah, so
isolation.
You're confusing the exclusion and the definition. So seclusion is defined in our policy, and I don't have it in front of me. You could probably pull it up, but seclusion is prohibited, but for the most extreme circumstances. And I think
safety of the student.
Yeah,
or
no one wants any child secluded. No one wants. Our teachers do not want to put their hands on children. That is I absolutely believe that. And I know that's the case. We want to make sure our students are safe, though, and in the rarest of circumstances, when a child is in a traumatic situation where they are in extreme risk of hurting themselves, hurting other students, or hurting teachers and staff. That is the only time that seclusion is allowed, and that is only while waiting for emergency support. And that is per our previous policy, per the updated policy that we worked with MODE on. And so I think that when we talk about what's going on here, there's a lot of there's a lot of narratives that are being created about how and a lot of confusion in definitions and what we allow and what we don't. That's but that's per our policy. Like, children should not be secluded, and at no time is any of this like isolation, seclusion. At no time is it a punishment.
It's never for non-compliance with orders.
It's never for that. It should never be.
It should never be, or it never is.
It should never be.
Yeah.
And I'll stand by that. I am not the person in the classroom.
Yeah.
But it should never be. And if there's ever evidence that it is, someone should pick up the 800 number and call Children's Division and hotline that situation. There's a phone number. And there's a website, and there's all of that. If there's ever a situation like that, where our policies are being violated and a child is being put at risk, someone should call Children's Division. I'm not opposed to statewide legislation. I think it would make it clear from the it would make Columbia Public Schools and all the other school districts have a clear understanding of how the law works, and that the IEP meetings can be recorded by anyone, and not just as they are currently allowed to be recorded for ADA, IDA, and 504. At a state level, one of the things that we ask, like, managing this on our own would be a pretty significant cost. I think it's easy to sit and say, like, hey, here's a thing I found online after a tertiary Google search, just use this. But from a Columbia Public Schools standpoint, we want to make sure that I want to make sure that records are properly being stored and things of that nature. Any recording would be a student record, and we'd need to keep that for potentially up to 23 years. I imagine that if the state moved to allowing this, that a lot of the cost burden that the Columbia Public Schools would be facing could be mitigated because there would be vendors that would move into the market and recognize Missouri as a potential opportunity for them, in the same way that we use vendors for currently the maintenance, storage, and maintenance of IEPs. So I think that would be one of the benefits of this being recording being allowed statewide, and not just district by district. The other is as I mentioned before, teachers. And SPED is one of the hardest positions for us to fill. And if we're only keeping on par with salaries and benefits as our comparison school districts and our competitive school districts, the districts that we compete for staff with, I can imagine that if even though I understand a parent's perspective, and I absolutely empathize with the desire. These are challenging meetings, as they've been explained to me by families. I absolutely believe and understand the desire for the recordings, but it's teachers have expressed to us that they have some reservations. They're concerned. And that some of that can be mitigated through training, but at the same time, I suspect that if a teacher, if everything was equal and a teacher had a choice, and there was a school district that allowed recordings, and they didn't necessarily feel comfortable with that, they may choose the other job opportunity. So I think it would make it more challenging for us to hire and retain highly qualified educators.